I am here with the delightful Harriet Hancock, who is a someone that I've got to know recently over recent months and had some really interesting conversations with about freedom. And Harriet's got this amazing leadership background working in immigration and justice and has worked in prisons. And so we wanted to explore the topic of freedom. It's like, what is freedom and uh, do we feel free? Are we free? To what extent do we feel free? And are we living our lives with freedom as opposed to feeling constrained or limited or stuck in a certain way of living or doing? So it'd be great to just hand over to you, and we're going to riff off of each other and have just a general conversation. Harriet, yeah, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. It's lovely to be in this conversation. Um, I think for me, if I may just share a little story from in prison that's this happened maybe 10 years ago, and it's a story I go back to again and again in my mind, and it's one I share often, and it's a story about a prisoner having a sense of freedom. Um, and so essentially, and it's a very simple little story. Essentially, I was in prison one day. Um, and I was walking from one prison wing to another um, through a little outside space, sort of quite narrow gap between two buildings. And in that space, there was a prisoner who was litter picking. And as I walked past him, I said good morning, as I always would. And there was something about the way he said good morning back that stopped me in my tracks. And I said, wow, you're cheerful. And he stood up and he said, well, it's a beautiful day. The sun's shining, the sky's blue, I'm outside. And in my head, I didn't say this out loud, but I thought, yeah, but you're in prison. But he obviously could feel that's what I was thinking because he said, um, looks like you're more in prison than me today. And uh, and then he said, you can put me in prison, but you can't take away my freedom. And that that was the end of the exchange, but that has stayed with me for a really long time, and it's gone in very deep because that what I heard from him and really saw him living in that moment was he was free beyond, he was completely free in his thinking to enjoy that sunshine, that blue sky, that being outside. He was free from any thinking he had about, I'm in prison, I've got to do this many years, I did this terrible thing, and that's why I'm here, and I'm missing this, and can't wait for that. Like he was free from all of that thinking in that moment. And that was really impressive to me. And it spoke to me of where am I not doing that? Where am I? And in fact, that particular day, and this was what he was seeing in me, was I was really grumpy. I didn't want to be at work that particular day. I had young kids. I'd rather have been at home. It was a weekend, busy, lots of stuff going on. And I was caught in all of that. And he was free from all of that. And the only difference to me, I got curious about what was the difference. And to me, that looks like the difference was simply he had in that moment an ability to let go and focus on and choose his thoughts, if you like, and connect with something deeper and better in that moment.
Wonderful. And so I'm like anyone listening to this and to myself, I'm thinking, am I free? Am I free? And do I feel free? And what strikes me is a couple of things. One is, do I feel free is a momentary thing when I'm looking at the blue sky and enjoying the flowers, when I'm present, when I'm in this moment and here now engaging in this moment, not caught up in like whatever my mind is doing or busyness. It's like there's a feeling of freedom here right now. Um, and it's a pure and simple feeling, like presence, freedom, sort of combining is just there's a juicy, rich feeling of being alive and that comes with freedom. And then the other part of freedom for me that was coming up as you were talking is something around the stories I'm caught up in. Because I could be in prison, caught up in a story that says, I've got another 10 years to serve. I'm not free. I've got to stay in here. And in with my client work with leaders, like I notice a lot like people caught up in stories like I have to work hard. I have to I have to provide for my kids, and providing my kids is working extremely hard and making as much money as I can. Um, I have to stay in this job. I can't set up the business that I would love to set up. I have to put my kids, like, there's lots of have tos that mean there's a lot of people that, uh, in their sort of underpinned belief systems, are operating from I have to, and they don't feel free to choose life. And it strikes me that if we were free, we could be free to say, what work do I want to do in this lifetime? Where do I want to live? Yes, yes, I've got kids. Yes, I've got some responsibilities, but what do I want for this abundant, amazing life? Where and how am I gonna live it with freedom?
I think that it's interesting hearing you talk about that because I was thinking about how we don't need to feel free to be free. I've shared with you, Martin, I've recently gone on a gym adventure and getting into physical fitness. And someone said to me a couple of months ago, just as I was starting this, the good news is you don't have to feel like going to the gym to go to the gym. And that's really stayed with me and been really helpful in terms of getting up early and going to the gym and working hard and accessing all the benefits of that. And there's something in there around freedom too. I don't have to feel free. Like the sun doesn't have to be shining, the sky doesn't have to be blue for me to be in that state of presence. That the circumstances can be quite challenging, whether that's something going on in the prison that I'm having to resolve, or whether that's something to your examples of, well, I've got kids, I do need to feed them, I do need to provide for them financially, and maybe that's difficult, and maybe the economy this and whatever that, but there's something about holding that with a lightness,
Yes.
a sort of sense of freedom. I don't know if that's different to a feeling of, like, it doesn't all have to be sunshine and blue skies for me to be connected deeply to my freedom.
So I'm holding two things. One is whatever we're doing, wherever we are, whatever our circumstances, prison, uh, not prison, 20 kids and a massive family, or no kids, is like, and a big job with lots of responsibility. We can there's a being level of freedom, which is whatever's going on in my life, I can be in freedom. And so I'm thinking of this as a leader as well, Harriet, is like, because I notice how leaders constrain themselves. Like, I can't express myself really in this culture. It's a large organization, and I've got to toe the line, or it's like that's an example where in an organization I can shut down my freedom, my authenticity, my self-expression, because I think a certain way. Um, I might be going off on one here, but like there's a couple of things. Like one is this being of like in any situation I can be free. I can be me. I can let myself out. And the second part of it is I can also make choices. Um, like I can make choices differently that give me uh like because part of freedom is making the like I'm not in prison and I do have the choice to say if I want to start on Friday at 10 in the morning, I can do that.
Yeah, I think there's something there about being clear about what freedom is. Your example there of speaking about leaders feeling they can't be their full authentic self at work. I've I was about to say I've had that. I continue to have that at times, and I think that's a mountain with no top because I think that's more about me than the organisation. Maybe it's both, but I've been in situations where, as a leader, I've felt I can't really say my bit. I can't be me, and I've struggled at times and found that quite wearing. And and I know that it's me applying those restraints. So I had
Yeah.
a really interesting exchange last week with my boss, who essentially in the conversation said, "Harriet, I need you to be more bold." He didn't say it like that. There was a bit of language in there, but it what what was really interesting for me in that moment was seeing that I was in that conversation coming from I can't really make myself heard. I can't really be me. I can't really say what I want to say. And yet he was demanding almost that I be bold and say what I thought and say what I saw and say what I wanted. And and in that moment, I really trust my boss. I really have a huge amount of respect for him. So in that moment, I was able to see he was demanding it of me. His demand of it matched my desire to be more bold, to be more free. And it wasn't, and to go back to that exchange with that prisoner, it was that I was busy sitting in, um, I'm in some way imprisoned in terms of my ability to be authentically me at work. But I had put myself in that cage.
Yes. And so freedom is an inside job. It's about the
Mm.
way that it's like primarily it's about what's going on in my mind and my thinking that has me not feel free or be free. Is what I'm hearing from what you're saying. Um,
Absolutely. And I think sorry,
Go for it.
I think I confused it for years with I'm not quite sure the words for it, but I was frightened of freedom because freedom looked like I might go crazy. Or I might, if I was authentically me at work, am I suddenly going to be like wildly out of kilter with everyone? And actually, that's to your point about choices. That actually, um, almost that freedom to not hold back and to be restrained, like that sit between in each moment between that. I'm restraining this, but I'm amplifying that. That's actually where the freedom is for me. That there are parts of myself, not parts of myself, maybe that's not the right language, but I don't need to talk about my kids all day at work, for example. Like, I don't need to go in as the mother at work. I'm when I'm in work, I'm there as a leader. So I don't need. I can take the learning and benefit and experience and the wholeness of the fact that I'm a mother and a wife and a friend and all of that as well. But in that moment, what I'm really amplifying is my leadership rather than all those other parts of myself. So there's a way of being free that is choosing and discerning what does this moment most want from me now.
Yes. Thank you. So I'm just going to share something. I'm going to move us on slightly and build on this. I'm going to share a quote from Gene Key's Richard Rudd's work. If you're familiar with it, some people might be. And his definition, like he says about freedom, freedom arises when your own inner authority, that is, when you stop blaming others or life itself for your struggles and instead take responsibility for your outlook, choices, and energy. So freedom arises, I'm not sure if I said that well. Freedom arises when you own your inner authority. You own your inner authority. So you stop blaming life or others and you take responsibility for your choices, your outlook, and your energy. So I love those three words. Is like I'm taking responsibility for I'm not getting caught up in my thinking that or blaming. And I've got an outlook. The prisoner you talked about, he had an outlook of positivity and presence and gratitude and joy. The outlook we can take responsibility for. We can also take responsibility for our choices. It's like this is what I'm going to do in this meeting, or this is what I'm going to do this week at work, or to actively choose and not feel constrained. And the third thing about freedom is responsibility for energy. And as I'm saying that, and as like I feel free right now in my expression in this is like there's an energy that also comes with freedom. So I'm interested for each of us, like that's listening to this, and for you and I now, is to go like, to what extent is my outlook free? To what extent are the choices I'm making today and this life and this year free? And to what extent, like, is there a freedom in the energy that's going on? And and if I may just carry on and build on this, in Gene Keys it says that the most significant level of freedom is at absolute spiritual liberation beyond the personal identity. So I'm sort of tying this together to say freedom is like freedom from my thinking, freedom from the patterns and the limitations of the way I'm living or the way I'm thinking I have to live. And then this ultimate freedom is freedom from my personal identity of like all the stories I've got about who I am or what I need to be. In the moment that I let all of that go, there's there's utter freedom. And when we drop into that space, it's pretty damn beautiful to drop into. And at the same time, then we can make the choices, the outlook, the choices, the energy is uh, all like incredibly powerful, amazing. And to link this into leadership is like then we are this incredible leader beyond what we might think. Self-expressed, powerful, authentic, clear, and I can see that that's what's needed in this world today is leaders that are free.
I love that, Martin. I'm going to have to listen again a few times to really soak in that. Um, where it's taking me, and maybe this is another conversation, is the join up of freedom and intuition, because it feels for me that the deeper I connect with that very, that ultimate freedom, the more clearly I hear the intuition, the more clearly I can listen to myself, to others, to the moment, the more present I can be. And in that space, that's where all the creativity is.
Yeah.
That's where there's the joy of and freedom to create.
Yes.
It's interesting. I've felt for a long time this. Well, I think for years I felt so not free and so in a cage. My kind of purpose was to find freedom. Well, actually, to begin with, it was to find safety. What I craved was a sense of safety, and then when I found safety, I discovered it didn't feel free at all, and it was just another cage. And then I've spent years really pursuing freedom, and then in more recent years, it's been around kind of a purposefulness that comes out of a free space. So freedom on its own, and this probably isn't that deep ultimate layer of freedom. This is probably me on the journey down to that depth, but I have a sense that being free for freedom's sake is one thing. Being free to really be purposeful is another. And when I say purposeful, I feel like I introduced some tightness in with that, but I didn't mean to. What I meant was um, that join up with intuition and the interconnectedness of us all,
Yes.
and creating sort of powerfully and magnificently in that space.
Yes. So, I like from freedom, from utter pure freedom, from that space we were in a minute ago, perhaps together, is anything like anything is possible. It's why my company's called Unbounded. It's like anything is possible from a being and a feeling and a of freedom, purpose, clarity, wisdom. It all like self-expression. It all comes amazing leadership. It all comes from this space of utter freedom. And 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 on that note, I'm going to close this beautiful conversation. Thank you so much, Harriet.
Thank you, Martin.